So how do we determine the size of our system? How large a system in kilowatts depends on, and I'm talking about kilowatts out of the solar panels themselves. Number one, your ultimate budget limit. We're all going to have a budget maximum. Number two, your electrical usage. What are you going to power? What is your energy budget, as we talked about? Number three, your equipment costs. You need to go out and find the best deals. Take your time to find the best prices on all your components. And fourth, your tax incentives. Well, if there are a whole bunch of local and other incentives, you might go with that grid tie system. But if you're going battery backed up like we're teaching you here, the federal incentives going up to 2016 right now do give you tax credit for battery backed up systems. So let's break these down. Rule number one is don't make more than you need. Don't make more power than you actually need. Something to remember in sizing your system, other than your budgetary constraints, is that you're going to be producing less than or up to as much power as you actually use in the house that it's connected to. You don't want to produce more power than you actually use because you're paying top dollar to produce this power. And if you're on a grid tie, say, you're going to be spinning the meter backwards, selling power back at premium price you pay to produce, but selling it back at their sort of wholesale price. So, although in grid tie systems you do use the grid itself to store your energy, don't produce more power than you actually need. And you're going to produce all the way from just a little bit of power in a very small system up to that actual amount. One of the things to look at is incentive metering. And incentive metering is where the commercial electric supplier has progressively higher rates per kilowatt hour the more electricity you use. And this is to encourage electrical savings. Now, in Central Texas, for example, the first 500 kilowatt hours is about 3.5 cents a kilowatt hour. Over that, from 500 to 2,000 kilowatt hours of usage per month is at 7.5 cents, and over 2,000 is 10.5 cents a kilowatt hour. I call it top-down savings, replacing the higher cost kilowatt hours. So if your system is, say, 3 kilowatts of output, and that generates about 500 kilowatt hours per month, remember our rule of 6 watts per panel equals about 1 kilowatt hour per month? If you use about 1,000 kilowatt hours a month, which is pretty typical, if your utility charges more over the first 500 kilowatt hours of use, you'll be replacing the higher cost top 500 kilowatt hours with photovoltaic generated electricity. This tiered system is important to you or your prospective client because your rate of return diminishes once you get over that first tier. In this case, we're talking 500 kilowatt hours of use. So that's going to have an influence on how big a system you design. Now let's look at a typical home and its size versus its typical usage of electricity in kilowatt hours. These are the typical kilowatt hour usage ranges for homes in the U.S. right now. So an 800 square foot cabin would use about 300 to 600 kilowatt hours, a 1,500 square foot home, 600 to 900, a 2,100 square foot home, say a 4-person home, 900 kilowatt hours to 1,200 kilowatt hours, and a 3,000 square foot home, 1,200 kilowatt hours to 2,500 or above. In taking a look at tax incentives and rebates, there are more programs for grid tie systems because local and utility company programs favor grid tie. They want you to produce power and put it into their system. But the federal 30% tax credit in place until 2016 includes battery-based photovoltaic systems, and its $2,000 cap was removed for systems put in service after January 1st, 2009. This is a very significant tax credit program. So let's compare two systems, the exact same size, 10,000 watts, in Little Rock, Arkansas, and in New York State. And this is going to be a grid tie system with some battery backup to it, a hybrid system that has all of the incentives available to it. So we've got a 10,000 watt PV system at about $50,000 gross cost. The federal incentive only is available for Little Rock, Arkansas, because there is nothing else available in Arkansas. And that's going to be $16,667 tax credit from the feds with an out-of-pocket net cost of $33,333. If you build that same system in Southampton, Long Island, New York, that same $50,000 gross system, the city of Southampton has a PV rebate program giving you $2,500. New York State has the CERTA program still available at this time with a $30,000 rebate. And then you've got the federal tax incentive on top of it. So you've got $49,167 in credits and rebates that are possible. You could have as little as an $833 out-of-pocket net cost. Now these are two extreme examples, but it shows you the effect that tax credits can have on installing a system. Something that has to be taken into consideration as well is how many hours is the array going to be in full sun? Because remember the old rule that I told you about 6 watts of panels equals 1 kilowatt hour of energy per month? Well, if we have, say, 9 hours of sun a day, and you slide that ball down to the right where it says 9, if you look to the left, we only need 4 watts of photovoltaic panels to generate a kilowatt hour for that month. We just made the whole system 30% smaller for the same power output. If we slide the ball to the left, and we go up to, say, 4 hours of sun a day only, we'd need 9 watts of photovoltaic panels to generate that same kilowatt hour of energy per month. What does this mean? Do everything you can do to get those panels maximum time in the direct sunlight. Your system's cost and ultimate size are going to depend on it. Let's say you wanted to design a system that would completely replace your current electrical usage. Say you had an unlimited budget. This is how you would go about it. Number one, add up all of your monthly utility bills, all the electrical bills from the last 12 months, and divide by 12 to get that average monthly kilowatt hour usage. Then go online and check the solar sun hours map and get the hours of sunlight per day that you can expect to get. Are you shaded? Are you not shaded? You're going to need a little bit more if you're up north, far north, or a little bit less if you're far south. So 3, you're going to calculate how many watts per kilowatt hour will be required in your solar power array, to generate it. That, remember, as you go south, you need a little bit less. That multiplier is going to be slightly shifted off that 6 watts per kilowatt hour per month number, depending on if you're north or south. Now, number 4, multiply that number by the monthly average kilowatt hour use, and that's going to give us our total PV array size required. That's the big number. Then multiply that total of watts needed by 1.15. That adds 15% because you're going to have a little bit of loss on the wires and the battery and the inverter. So it gives you a little bit of extra elbow room. And this is the total power of photovoltaics in watts needed to completely replace your current electrical usage. So let's calculate an example. Say you use 1,200 kilowatts per month average, and that's pretty typical. So when I'm in the mid-states, I'm in Iowa, and I know I can get 6 hours a day average sunlight because my panels are totally in the clear. I have them with a complete unobstructed view of the sky. So that means at 6 watts of panels per kilowatt hour per month, 1,200 kilowatt hours per month times 6, that's 6 watts per kilowatt hour required of panels to generate it, equals 7,200 watts of photovoltaics required. And then I'm going to add my 15% for a little bit of elbow room there, and I come out with 8,280 watts total. Now that's really a conservative estimate because we're going to have a little bit of losses, and I know I can get at least 6 hours average, and that's how we come up with a number if we have an unlimited budget and we're coming purely from the kilowatt hours of month average usage angle. The thing is, most people aren't coming from an unlimited budget perspective. They're thinking, well, what can I really afford? Let's look at a system cost breakdown by percentage, and these are general estimates, give or take a little bit. So with $2 per watt in photovoltaics, which is a pretty decent price right now, with a mid-size 1,500 watt system, you can expect to put about 40% of your cost into the photovoltaic panels themselves. About 25% of the cost is in the batteries, another 25% of the cost in the charge controller, inverter, and breakers, the electronics. And then 10% of the cost, the last 10%, in the wire, lumber, or metal, and hardware that you're going to need to assemble the system. Now we're going to have to do our rebate and tax credit discount factor calculation so that we know how much we can really spend on all our components and still be within our budget. So add up all your credits. Let's say we have 35% total tax credits and rebates, and your budget's $5,000. So add that percentage to 100. 100 plus 35 is 135, and divide that by 100. 135 divided by 100 equals 1.35. And if we multiply that by our budget, 1.35 times the 5,000, we get $6,750. So we can spend $6,750 and still only be out, bottom line, $5,000. So now we're going to formally step through the estimation process slowly. First, we set our maximum budget limit, whatever we think that is, and then we find all the tax credits and rebate programs that we can come up with for our area. And then we look at our place and estimate our power usage so we know approximately what our energy budget is. And then we maximize the sun exposure to figure out how many watts of panels are we really going to need to make that kind of kilowatt hours, so we have that in mind. Then we multiply our budget limit by that inverse of the rebate percentage. Remember, that's our discount factor number, was 1.35 there. And then we're going to come up with our maximum amount of workable money that we can spend and still be within our budget. Then we take 40% of that resulting number, and that's your estimate for how much you can spend on solar panels themselves, give or take a little bit. Then you've got your 25% for batteries, 25% for the charge controller and inverter, and 10% for the wire, wood, and etc., which there will be. Hopefully that PV 40% result will buy you a good percentage of your energy budget. So readjust your maximum budget to fit from that point. Now, don't forget what I call the bonus value factor when you're talking to a client or thinking about adjusting your maximum budget amount. By adding a solar power system, you will increase the value of a home by a significant amount. And when that home is sold, people will go out looking at comparable homes. But when yours has that solar power system, it gives you a really good competitive advantage and increases the value. Now, I wanted to mention a PV price effect here, something I mentioned a little bit earlier in the video. It's great news. PV panel prices have been dropping, and they were $45 a watt from the 1960s until just now. So if you can get down around a $1 a watt, which is possible, you can lower your PV budget to about 30% or under, and add that extra 5% each to the batteries and inverter budgets. So try to get a package price on all but the batteries. Overall system cost and payback time are much reduced. And now let's review Chapter 13, System Estimation. First, don't make more power than you're going to use. Second, look at how the utilities rates are structured. Do they have incentive metering? That's going to make a little bit of a difference for you. Then investigate all the solar tax and rebate programs available to you in your area. Then get the maximum sun to lower your system size requirement. More sun hours decreases the cost of your entire system. 5. Consider the increase in the home's value, because this is a capital improvement on the home. So that's sort of a bonus on top, and it's important to consider when you're talking to a prospective client or thinking about making a major investment in solar yourself. And last, walk through the estimation process as I outlined. And remember, lower your energy usage first, as I show you in the bonus chapter, so that you can design a smaller solar system to begin with.